Hey guys, what's up? It is week 410. Got a bunch of reviews for you, a small update. Let's hop into this. First up is Venom from Blue Underground Films. This is 1981. Yeah, this is the 4K release. Now, I've covered Venom a couple times on my show. I covered the Blu-ray when it was initially released, and I actually had Troy Howarth on for the 1981 special to discuss Venom. Venom is kind of an underrated film. It's directed by Piers Haggard, who did Blood on Satan's Claw and some other TV films and stuff like that. British director. And it has an amazing cast, including Oliver Reed, Klaus Kinski, Susan George, Sterling Hayden, just a bunch of people in here, a bunch of smaller roles that are also great. So yeah, this is basically a hybrid of a crime film and an animal attacks movie. This was based on a novel that I think it was written by, was it a South Africa? They talk a lot about the novel and everything like that. And the novel was written kind of in the times, or maybe a little bit before, when they had that big kind of animals attacks novel kind of craze thing. This is definitely a movie that's kind of been wrongfully, I guess, advertised or wrongfully represented. More people they advertise it as a horror film, and it's definitely more of a crime kind of thriller, but with a horror aspect. So what happens is a group of kidnappers decide to kidnap this kind of local boy. He's wealthy, from this this wealthy family, and while everybody's kind of out of the house, the chauffeur's in on it, and Oliver Reed and Dave, Susan George the nanny's in on it, and they kind of have this weird, bizarre character in Klaus Kinski that's an outside source. It's kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing, and they're trying to kidnap this kid, but something goes wrong when he goes to pick up a pet. What he thinks is a house snake from the pet store, the local pet store, and it ends up being a black mamba that somebody ordered for, kind of just scientific purposes. So the black mamba gets loose in the house when they're supposed to take the kid. Everybody gets trapped in the house, including Sterling Hayden, and there's this black mamba. Now, this movie's pretty infamous for the idea that Klaus Kinski and Oliver Reed could not stand each other. They have a huge kind of reputation for being kind of difficult to work with. Oliver Reed being an alcoholic. Sterling Hayden also kind of was, this is his last film he made. I don't think he had a reputation being difficult, just kind of a strange character, eccentric character, and huge films like Doctor Strangelove and The Godfather, of course. Nikhil Williamson is also in this. I know him more from not his stage work, but of course Exorcist 3, The Heretic. It's not The Heretic. Exorcist 2 is The Heretic. Exorcist 3 is which one? Which one is Exorcist 3? There we go. Not The Heretic. They hate the fucking Heretic. The Exorcist 3 is... Geez, why can I not think of this? It's not going to come to me today. But, yeah, so he's also in that as the kind of main exorcist at the end in the reshoot parts. But he's a police kind of... I don't know if he's a captain sergeant, but he's out in the streets kind of negotiating with the criminals and stuff. And they block the whole street off. Makes for a nice kind of location, honestly. Kind of claustrophobic. But this movie keeps your attention. Probably just because the main cast is so good. The little boy in here is only in a handful of movies, but he's really strong as well. And I think that the acting and the story flows pretty well. It's also an infamous film because Tobe Hooper got fired on this. He had a rough patch, of course. They talk about all this in the special features, but it's kind of common knowledge. Tobe Hooper in the late 70s, early 80s had a rough patch. Got fired from The Dark. Got fired from Venom. And the whole Poltergeist thing where a lot of people, he didn't direct it. So all that stuff is played into this and whatnot. So it's just definitely a strange, kind of interesting film. There is a slap in this film, and I always make the joke, it's a slap heard while in the world. Everybody completely stopped when Klaus Kinski slaps Oliver Reed in this movie. It's just incredibly intense enough that I had to include it in my 1981 opening. Rewatching this in 4K, it looked fantastic. It's just kind of amazing. You see the blood vessels on Oliver Reed's face, and the sound was actually a huge upgrade. It was Dolby Atmos, and when Blue Underground does its Dolby Atmos, they do a really great job with it. You could hear all the little different musical cues and stuff because it's got a really good soundtrack. Probably the soundtrack seems almost just I don't want to say it seems bigger because it's not. This movie actually had a decent budget and everything like that. I think the book had a fairly solid I can't say that either. Reputation, which I'm ruining mine right now. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have two commentaries. One with Piers Haggard, which is carried over from the original release. He's passed since, unfortunately. And then we have a new audio commentary, which is really cool here. We have Troy Howarth, who was on the show and talked about it. Big fan of this film. Nathaniel Thompson, also great. And Eugenie Ercolani also accompanies these two guys on a lot of Italian releases. So that's very cool. And that's on the 4K, which looks great, like I said. And then we have some new special features as well. Fangs for Memories, interview with editor, second unit director Michael Bradsell. New Slithery Story, interview with makeup artist Nick Dudman. And new Mamba Memories, interview with author and critic Kim Newman. And then Pick Your Poison, new interview with the Dark Side's Alan Bryce. So the two with the kind of critics and stuff on there, they talk a lot about the movie, and they seem to have some appreciation for it. I think Bryce much more than Kim Newman. Kim Newman doesn't seem to think it's the great movie, but it's definitely serviceable. He talks about how British films at this time were unfortunately all kind of at this level not that great. I don't agree really. I think Venom's pretty solid. I enjoy it, but this behind the scenes stuff was interesting because they talk about Hooper getting fired. They go in a little bit more depth and nuance on that, and the special effects, how they used the Black Mamba in this kind of special place where nobody was around it at all. And then they brought up the question, well, don't you think they should have just filmed these scenes completely separate offset? But it is what it is. They wanted that kind of little note on there that said film with the real Black Mamba. But overall, it's a really solid crime thriller that kind of got shit on, not rightfully so. I think it's a good film. It's got a great cast. It's much better than some of the other Oliver Reed's kind of later day horror films, like when you get to Severed Ties. He's one of my all-time favorite actors, but when you get to stuff like Severed Ties, I don't think he's tremendous in that. He's tremendous in this one. Him yelling at a little kid is great. Him saying, going to get alcohol, getting excited. He's like, at one point he's on the couch and he's like, maybe we get a drink. And he's just like, you look a little too excited to say that. I have to make the low-hanging fruit joke about his alcoholism because it's such a embedded part of his character. History with him. What did he make that joke when he said he went on this talk show when he showed up drunk or something? He said, if I don't show up drunk, it's a bigger story. Everybody expects me to be drunk, so here I am. It just plays into it, unfortunately. Amazing actor. Klaus Kinski is also really intense in here. I just start calling him real-life vampire Klaus Kinski because he's such a creep in so many things, behind the scenes and stuff, but he's such a tremendous presence on screen. He's great in this. And the end with him and the snake is pretty awesome. Overall, solid movie. There's a couple squibs that go off. I think they did that really well. The special effects are solid. The snake work is great. It ends on a stinger, which is very much in that animals attack vein from the time. More from the 70s, but still more so than it feels like a crime thriller. But overall, great release from Blue Underground. A hilarious tagline on the front here that's probably upset people when they rented it. The mystery of the birds. What fucking mystery? The danger of Psycho. It's a little bit more dangerous than Psycho in certain ways. The evil of the omen. I don't think anybody's quite as evil as the devil. And the terror of Jaws. Maybe a little bit. But it's just now the ultimate in suspense. It's just so falsely advertised. But a really good crime horror film in Venom from 1981 from Blue Underground. Alright guys, next up is another 4K here from Arrow Video. And I'm going to follow up an Animal Attacks movie with another one. And this is Deep Blue Sea on 4K. That's right. It's crazy to think. What year was this? 99, 98? 1999. I saw this bad boy in theaters at the tender age of 13 years old. And even then I was kind of like, man, I don't know if that looks that great. It came out around the same time. That and Lake Placid, I both was like, eh. But, revisiting it, I actually found some more appreciation from Deep Blue Sea. And not just then, not just now. I always found more appreciation. Every time I watched it again throughout the years, I always was like, that's a fun, crappy, fun B-movie shark thing. And it's exactly what it should be. And it always delivers on the goods. So this is directed by Renny Harlin, who got his start early with some horror films like Prison and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. And then he would direct some action films, Die Hard 2, Long Kiss Goodnight, of course, Cliffhanger, Vertical Limit. He did a lot of big movies, Cutthroat Island, and then kind of like his star meter kind of faded a little bit when he did Cutthroat Island. That movie is a huge flop, as they say. But so Deep Blue Sea came after that, and I know he made those Strangers movies, the new kind of redux of the Stranger films recently. So I believe he was a Scandinavian originally director, but I liked his early work. Of course, loved Prison, loved Nightmare on Elm Street 4, big fan of Cliffhanger, and stuff like that. Long Kiss Goodnight, always a blast. So Deep Blue Sea. This is a big budgeted movie, man. And it's at the time, right, when they were using CGI a little bit more, but they were still using practical. So it's at that cusp where CGI looks like kind of crap, kind of shitty, but the practical effects are great. The sets are great. Building these sets are great. And the cast is really strong. So you have Thomas Jane in here, LL Cool J, Michael Rappaport, one of the Skarsgård, Stellar Skarsgård. There's some other familiar faces. The lead actress in this always slips my mind. I never remember her name. Samuel L. Jackson, that's right. So essentially what is happening here is they are breeding these kind of special sharks because they realize sharks do not get like degenerative brain disease or something along those lines. They don't really age like in the way that humans do. Like they don't get Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff. So they have breeded these sharks specially. They're giant. They're killers. They kind of hyped up their brains to make them super sharks because there's something in that brain, the serum or something, the serum, I have to say it in the sci-fi way. That's how you say sci-fi brain liquid. Is always serum. Some sort of like liquid or plasma, if you will, that they need out of the shark's brain to kind of possibly mix with some medication and want to cure Alzheimer's. So this group of, scientists, along with Thomas Jane, who's like kind of the shark wrangler, if you will, are visited by this big kind of money man in Samuel L. Jackson, who's sent by Ronnie Cox in a wordless role, which is fucking weird. He's just sitting there. Was it like a favor or something like that? Ronnie Cox, of course, from Deliverance and RoboCop and a bunch of other movies and stuff like that. So it's really weird that he's just sitting there. But So they show up, and of course, something's gonna go wrong, and it does 100%. So the sharks screw up the compound, and one of the most ridiculous, insane scenes of all time. There's an injury, and this poor character is drug out through the underwater with an oxygen mask. The series of events that happen to this person, it's more believable sometimes in a Final Destination movie or an Omen movie when people die. This guy gets so screwed up. It's absolutely ridiculous, over-the-top fun death, and the whole compound goes down. Great sound effects in here. I think it's Dolby Atmos as well. It sure sounded like it. Just sounds fucking fantastic. I'm almost positive it's Dolby Atmos. Yeah, Atmos is on here. The sound mix was fucking perfection. Coming around, a lot of explosions, lots of crazy sounds. So the set is fucking amazing. Like if you were to say this is all shot on location, you'd be like, yeah, I believe that. But it was like a set built, which is amazing. But Thomas Jane is solid in here. Thomas Jane is a weird actor, right? He did The Punisher in, 2003, 2004? I can't remember exactly, which is my least favorite rendition of The Punisher, to be honest, the one he's in. And he did some other roles. He's in Boogie Nights and Thursday. And he always did a good job in those movies and The Mist. And he's a solid actor. Like, it's weird. Like, Thomas Jane should have been bigger than he was. Like, he always turned in solid performances, even if the movie wasn't great. Like, The Punisher movie's just like, no, I don't think anybody could save that. Roy Scheider couldn't save that fucking movie. That movie sucks. So like he always did his best and he did a solid job. He just never got up to that next step for some reason. I don't know. As far as maybe I'm concerned, maybe the movies I was looking for him in, he never popped up in. He was in 1922. Again, another good performance. I just don't know. He should have been more of an A-lister. He's solid in here as a shark wrangler with the haunted past. There's lots of tropes in this movie. This movie's tropey as all to hell, but it's fun in that kind of aspect. LL Cool J is like a chef, and he's just like mostly all the comic relief is added in. Michael Rappaport is solid in here. He does exactly what you expect. He's like, what are we going to do? That nervous kind of freak out energy that he has in True Romance or anything he's ever been in, kind of like talking a lot and being nervous. So like all the performances are good. The lead female in here, I cannot remember her name, and I don't want to do this because I feel like an asshole for getting it. So I'm gonna is it Saffron Burrows? She's an actress I'm really not familiar with, to be honest, and I'm sure she's in a few things, but I just don't really register her. She kind of has that cold demeanor, anything for science kind of attitude, which in some aspects, in the long run, it's like a heroic kind of state. But when you're getting attacked by these 3 giant killer sharks and you're trying to survive, then not really. Everybody's kind of upset with her, including the audience. So it kind of plays out like a Poseidon Adventure, or what was that film that came out a couple years back with the underwater? I think it's just called Underwater, which is really good with Kristen Stewart, which is fun. Kind of like they have to get up through the levels and save themselves to get to the shore because the base is completely destroyed, this underwater base, and they have to make sure they don't get eaten by sharks. So it's a lot of Poseidon Adventure kind of stuff. They have these giant obstacles that they got to get past. A lot of fun, and people get picked off here and there. The cast is great. LL Cool J is fun. I like everybody in the movie, and it has pretty good kills. There's a great kill in here that's infamous for involving one of the big actors, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's a great. It's almost the CGI in it is bad too, so it makes it just like that perfect kind of bad shark moment. And I know what you're saying. It's like, Dave, you sound inconsistent because you hate bad shark movies, but this movie's intent is not to be a bad film. It's really well made in a lot of the production steps, and it's a serious attempt. And that scene does come across humorous, and I think it's supposed to be a little humorous and shocking, but but at the same time, it is a little cheesy looking, which adds to the unintentional humor. So a little bit of that stuff is good. I just do not like purposely bad movies on purpose that are just like, this sucks. Isn't it funny? It's like, no, it's not fucking funny, man. Just try your best. And if you have no money, it's going to suck anyways, and maybe be endearing and funny in that way, and endearing and somebody might like it. But if you're purposely trying to make a piece of shit, it's next level shitty. It's not even like they tried and they suck and it's shitty but good. It's just shitty to me. So Deep Blue Sea is not that. Deep Blue Sea is a lot of fun. It's a millions of dollar budget here. But as far as the special features, they had a lot of archival stuff on here, but I chose to watch the new ones. So we have subtitles, of course, brand new audio commentary screenwriter Duncan Kennedy, brand new audio commentary by filmmaker and critic Rebecca McKendry. She has a bunch of podcasts, All Colors of the Dark, Killer POV before that. She loves shark films. She talks about a lot of the tropes and things like that in the shark films. She doesn't really get into the cast and the crew and the production. She more focuses on just the tropes of shark films and things like that. It's not like a super filled commentary where there's like not 1 second filled, you know what I mean? Like there's pauses and things like that, but that's fine. Archival audio commentary by director Renny Harlin and star Samuel Jackson. From the frying pan into the studio tanks, a new interview with production designer William Sadell. And this guy knows a lot about fucking productions. So he talks about getting working on this film, working with certain people, you know, how Renny was on the set, building the set, and all sorts of things like this. Most interesting special feature, honestly. You don't get to hear too much about the production design here. And I liked hearing the behind the scenes stuff on this because I didn't know how they built that fucking set. I didn't even know it was a set. I didn't know anything about that. So that was very interesting as well. Beneath the Surface, a new visual essay by film critic Trace Thurman, which is an odd one because, you know, when you think Deep Blue Sea, you think popcorn film, and he starts going into like gender politics and all these things like that. And you could, if you want to break down any movie, you can do that with. I don't see that when I watch Deep Blue Sea, and there is tons of movies that you can do that with. Any Dario Argento movie, for example, but I don't really see it in Deep Blue Sea. But maybe you do. He certainly does, so maybe if you want to watch that, find interest in it. When Sharks Attack, the making of Deep Blue Sea, an archive featurette. The Sharks of the Deep Blue Sea, an archive featurette. Deleted scenes with optional audio commentary by Harlin. Theatrical trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve with original and newly commissioned artwork by Luke Priest. 60-page, perfect bound collector's book containing new writing by film critics Josh Hurtado, Jenny Kermode, and Murray Leader, plus previously on-scene production art and designs. Double-sided fold-out poster featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Luke Priest. Postcards from Aquatica. So nice release of a movie I never thought I'd see. That Deep Blue fucking Sea, man. Fun movie. I'm getting so old that the movies when I was a kid are becoming like super nostalgic stuff, like for a lot of people. So hey, check it out. Okay, this next one here is from Neon Eagle, kind of like a sub-label, little side thing of Cauldron Films, and this is Ninja Terminator by Godfrey Ho. Godfrey Ho is a pretty infamous Hong Kong director. Started off working as like a second unit kind of production guy at Shaw Brothers. So he was with the big guys. He ended up branching off later on, of course, and making all these kind of weird oddball films. He's made hundreds of movies probably at this point. For me, he was known for making Men Behind the Sun Part 2 and Men Behind the Sun Part 3, The Narrow Escape. And his movies are kind of infamously goofy. He patches together a lot of films, so sometimes there'll be a movie that was made in the early 80s, a Taiwanese movie, and he'll get it, and he'll shoot 10, 15, 20 minutes of new footage and edit it into this movie, make people match up, and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's kind of what we have here. Oh, geez. The actor in here was known for the Shaw Brothers stuff. Was it Rich Harrison? And he's kind of like a B-movie kind of legend, the actor in here, Richard Harrison. And he's in Marco Polo. He was in, which I covered on here by Chang-Chi. And he's in a couple other ones. But he would be in a lot of B-movies. And he met Godfrey Ho while making that movie, I believe. So he asked, Godfrey Ho asked him to pop in and do some films like that. And we see a special feature interview with Godfrey Ho. And Godfrey Ho is being interviewed by, it's one of the, Army Venom, somebody like that, and they're just talking to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I call him in, and he'd work a couple days, get a vacation in Hong Kong with his wife, and they'd have fun. Even got his wife to pop up in this movie and some movies and stuff like that. But let me say this, Ninja Terminator, obviously the title, because ninjas are popular, Terminator's popular in 1985 when this was released. This is just a weird kind of like edit of another movie with like added scenes in here. And I know a lot of people love these movies. They eat them up. Like, you know, some of them work for me, like Miami Connection is absolutely ridiculous and fun. Dangerous Med never worked for me. And there's some other ones, too. And this one, you know, Furious works a little bit decent, too. I think it has endearing qualities. But Ninja Terminator doesn't make a fucking lick of sense to me. I can't make any sense of this movie. And I'm sitting here, and it's like, Dave, you're supposed to sit back, relax, and just laugh how fucking ridiculous it is. They're after this gold statue. It's in 3 parts. All these ninjas have certain parts, and they're constantly like fighting and meeting and arguing and being like, obviously like dubbed in or changing the story. Like, I was supposed to have this. You were supposed to have this. We must team up at this point now and fight. And there's basically like two Americans or 2 like European looking guys that they got to play these parts, one in Harrison, and it's just complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. The ending is ridiculous. A lot of people will find a lot of humor in it. But to me, the joke's old. You know, it doesn't last very long for me. You know, I don't find it that very, very much funny, that a patched together movie. It is bananas. It is fucking bonkers. A lot of people like it. Some of the fighting is fun. Some of it's weird. A lot of it's awkward. Everything's awkward. And it's just the dubbing's terrible. Everything about it. It works as kind of a curio to see how they could patch together a bunch of fucking movies, but Godfrey Ho did this a lot. Well, even with this Men Behind the Sun Part 2, it's just like a remake of the first one, but if it was cheesier and crappier, but still gross. Like, you know what I mean? So he just kind of does that kind of deal. I think he even had a hand in re-editing Girl with the Gun, is it a Taiwanese remake of Miss 45? He had a remake, and I think it came out in 85 as Lady in Red. So this is something that he always did. As far as Ninja Terminator is concerned, the movie is complete nonsense. I think a lot of people do enjoy it. They do find it funny. It looks great. It looks way better than it ever should. It sounds great. It looks great. And I enjoyed watching it to a certain extent, but I'm just always like, if I can't follow the story, I'm just like, what is happening to my brain? As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary by Kenneth Brosen and Phil Gillian of the Podcast on Fire, audio commentary by Asian experts Army Venema and Mike Leader, Ninja Master interview with director Godfrey Ho. I love seeing that, though, at least, the interview with him. Golden Ninja Dubs, interview with Godfrey Ho and dubber Simon Broad. Ninja Mania, How Many Ninjas Invaded the West, interview with Chris Peloggi, co-author of The Fist That Breaks Bricks. These Fists Break Bricks. There's an interview with I think it's like an old executive, or it might be the dubber guy, and he's talking about all the people who produced this and stuff. It's kind of legend that Godfrey Ho was one and the same with this guy, but he wasn't. It's just a lot of names, a lot of weirdness, a lot of banana shit going on behind the scenes. It seems like the Wild West of movie making, along with the Filipino films at the time, like, right, we're making all those like Mad Blood Island shit. So it's like, it's just a weird kind of time for movies, these like weird kind of films like this, these like Z-grade Hong Kong movies made in other countries, cobbled together movies. So anyways, Ninja Terminator is a fucking batshit. It's weird. It's crazy. And if it sounds like it's up your alley, check it out. Okay, the next one here is from Deaf Crocodile, and this is from 1969, a Czech film. This is Prague Nights. This is a bizarre one. This is an anthology, like I said, which in 1969, if it's not Amicus or something like that, it's probably not that known for an anthology kind of stuff. But I really like this movie. It's 3 stories, including the wraparound is tied in with 1 story. So we have like this rich business guy who meets this woman who's getting like a chauffeur with her. She's very mysterious. She's very gorgeous, and he's immediately intrigued with her. And, you know, he does seem like it's more lustful on his end, seemingly. And he kind of takes her out, and they're supposed to, like, he's obviously trying to push towards, you know, sexual intercourse and things like that. And she says, you don't really know me. I want to tell you these stories. And they're at like the cemetery. So she starts classic thing like, well, let me tell you what happened to this person. And we hear these kind of 3 stories. And the wraparound, I think, has a certain, like, I don't want to say sepia tone kind of look to it. But the other stories are more in like kind of a nice, like, I don't want to say like rich color for the time. I would say late 60s. It has a nice look to it, if that makes sense. Almost like, it's like kind of like at times drained of color, but it still looks like very rich scenery and stuff. It just looks very gorgeous, but a lot, just well done. So the first story is a golem story, which I like. You know, the golem is a monster, a classic monster that I don't know all that much about, except just in a couple of times it pops up in cinema. It's kind of underutilized, especially in Western culture. It's not really a thing in comparison to like over on Eastern Europe and things like that. The golem is kind of everywhere. Some people would consider the film Palzagari, the North Korean horror film, almost a golem story as well. I know Gollum pops up in Vampire Hunter D, which is fun. He even says so. He says golem when he attacks. So the idea of a golem story interests me. You know, it's just kind of creature you make out of clay and bring to life, kind of do your own means and things like that. And we have this kind of character. I've seen this actor before, I swear. But he's creating this giant golem, which looks really incredible. And he gets kind of, distracted by this woman, and in pretty much leads to his end, and the whole thing kind of comes crumbling down on top of him. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a nice little twist at the end of this one, and it kind of ties into the warning that basically our storyteller is saying to the guy she has in the cemetery. The second story, it follows this kind of rich woman who has a lot of finer things in life. These are all different period pieces in time and things like that, and she is like kind of royalty, and she has a bunch of money, and she seems like gluttonous, kind of just not an overall great person. And you kind of get that vibe that she's done some really shady, terrible things. And she hires this man because this young boy comes in and he's in trouble for stealing a loaf of bread. And just her demeanor, she gives him a piece of chocolate. She's like, I know he stole the bread, but I want him to know there's finer things in life than bread, and maybe he should steal something worth stealing. And she hires this guy to make bread shoes, this cobbler to make bread shoes, which is this really bizarre kind of thing. And this guy comes in and he's mysterious and he's obsessed with her feet. Now, obviously not on the level. What happens is she's like brought to a ballroom dance in this gorgeous kind of big empty room. And more and more dancers show up from her past that she knows. And we kind of learn who these people are, and we kind of learn who the cobbler is. It's a good story. It's creepy. It's scary. I think it's one of my favorite ones, probably, in the three. And then the final story ties into our main characters here. The woman tells a story, and it's all in musical. Very bizarre. It's actually the most fun. It's the most playful. It feels the most, I wouldn't say, they all feel very Eastern European. But, especially kind of this one in a lot of ways. Reminds me of like this whole movie reminds me of the Queen of Spades, the 1982 movie I watched. Kind of like that. But this last story is just very fun and playful, and it's all done in musical numbers and sung. And we have this kind of woman like treating these men almost as like a prostitute of sorts, and she poisons a bunch of people. And she finally meets her match in a man, and they kind of fall in love. I'll leave it at that. There's a nice little twist at it. It's kind of really entertaining, really great stuff. But this ties into the story with our main guy here. It's about 100 minutes long. It's 3 different directors in here, so all the shorts have their own different styles and things like that. I really thought this was good. I thought it was interesting. I think it's a pretty fairly easy, digestible Eastern European kind of horror, kind of fantasy film. A lot of times you pop in these and they're really like riddled with politics, although there is politics in here, directly being influenced from the time and things like that. But you can watch this politics free. Not there's anything wrong with politics in movies. It's just what I'm saying is when movies start to get Eastern European politics in their films, when it's a very complicated time with the Soviet Union and the fall of these countries and the changes of these countries' hands, it becomes a very complex issue, and it's not easily, digestible from Western viewers because they do not know the politics of their own country. How are they going to know the politics of another country? It gets crazy. But as far as the special features are concerned, new video interview with Czech film critic and screenwriter Teresa Brdečka and her father Jiří Brdečka, co-director and co-writer of Prague Nights, covering his famed career as a filmmaker, animator, and screenwriter. Approximately 45 minutes in English, and that's the guy who runs the company kind of interviews her. Now she does talk a lot, but her accent is pretty thick, so it's kind of hard to understand some of the things said. She does get into like the background of the film and stuff, starts talking about a lot how this got made and other things with the director's problems and things like that in where his country was. New audio commentary with Teresa Brdečka and Czech film expert Irina Kovarova of Comeback Company. Two Suburb Haunting Jiří Brdečka animated short films, Palma Stratz, Revenge, 68, 14 minutes, and There Was a Miller on a River, 11 minutes, both in Czech with English subtitles. Pretty cool looking shorts here, animated, different stuff. There's a lot of animation from Czech. New essay by Teresa Brdečka on the making of Prague Nights. Blu-ray authoring by David Mackenzie of Fidelity in Motion. New art by Beth Morris. A gorgeous looking, interesting movie. I would highly recommend checking this one out. This is Prague Nights. All right, next one here is from On Earth Films. This is 100 Tears, made in 2007 time frame, directed by Marcus Koch. Legendary special effects artist Marcus Koch had made Rot before this, which is a crazy fun movie with Joel D. Wynkoop, and then he also went on to make Fell, and he made American Guinea Pig Bloodshock. Marcus Koch has done special effects on hundreds of movies, and as far as directing is concerned, he's kind of underrated. I think that he kind of got the short end of the stick. He actually talks a little bit about how this movie came out and the lack of success and the reasonings and things like that in like a 45-minute kind of new segment, which I enjoyed. But 100 Tears is a gore film. It's a gore film about a killer clown. Now everybody's like, huh, where did I hear that before? I mean, it's common. Clowns and horror films are a big staple in there. But 2007, it was a little early. It's before, like, of course, Terrifier. And you can't not say that, right? But yeah, so we follow Gertie, this kind of like ex-circus clown. In the very beginning, he's kind of going through this halfway house, which is kind of really fucked up because you have all these halfway house people, and he just goes and with his giant meat cleaver, silently, violently starts killing everybody, chopping them up in a bunch of little different pieces and stuff. Really gory stuff. We also kind of are introduced to our two other characters here. They run kind of National Enquiry magazine, and John Davis is, I think it's the actor's name, plays the lead, and I can't think of the female's lead, but there's these two kind of pairing. One's kind of like your big kind of like heavy set kind of dumpy guy in the film. He's always kind of just like out of shape, stuff like that, always making comments how he can't do sit-ups. And the other one is like a highly attractive, kind of go-getter on this thing, and she wants to make a paper, do a story about serial killers. So she of course hears about this teardrop killer who is Gertie, who's never been caught, and he has a slew of a bunch of slangs that are tied to him. So they start to investigate and everything like that. They start to pay these kind of couple cops to give them information, and Duncan and Spaulding. It's got to be a shout out possibly, right? So they kind of do all that, and they start to kind of unveil this kind of story about Gertie. They meet some circus folk, and meanwhile Gertie is going around slashing, and he's mostly just chopping up people with this big meat cleaver. And he's come back to this small town for a reason. He's trying to find maybe somebody who's kin to him, maybe a lost lover, maybe something more. We also are introduced to this young girl who's probably in her like late teens, early 20s that also is going around killing people. Pretty wild kind of character. And of course, all these characters are going to meet this kind of blood-soaked end finale here. The opening is one thing that really takes you back. You're like, oh, this is a really crazy, non-stop, fast-paced gore film. Like seeing that. And then sometimes it does slow down a little bit with the story and the kind of detecting and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. The acting ranges, I think the two leads are fine. I think Gertie's a pretty scary character. I think the female, kind of psychopath in here is pretty great as well. Some of the side characters aren't necessarily amazing or anything like that. Kind of crummy, but that's extras. That's extra work for you and stuff like that. I did think the Cardi guy, the old guy they met, he was pretty solid as well. But yeah, there's the kill counts through the roof, and every once in a while they'll probably notice the movie slowing down a little bit. So they're like, hey, let's have this rave scene where a bunch of people get hacked and chopped up, which is fun. Overall, this one's decent. I like this movie. I think it's fun. The only problems I ever really encounter with it is just kind of some script stuff where they're like, man, we know, like they wrote themselves into a corner and their characters are like, well, they really need to get here. It's like, well, have them call this person, and this person will give them the information. They kind of set themselves up a couple, like, kind of escape kind of ways to get out of it, which is fine, because, I mean, I guess you write your own script, but it does seem a little, like, clunky a couple times here and there. Overall, 100 Tears kind of, you think it would be bigger with all the kind of gore films that are popular, but I think that with this new Blu-ray, maybe it will get a little bit more love and recognition. It was shot in 2007, so it's not, like, the most fantastic-looking movie ever. It was a low-budget gore film by Marcus Koch. And I don't think this is Marcus's favorite of his films, but I do think it's a solid one. There are some new features on here as well. So we have audio commentary with the director Marcus Koch and Stephen Biro from On Earth Films, of course. They talk about how actually he was going to release this originally, but Anthem Films got it, which I had that DVD years ago. I probably might still have it boxed up or anything like that. But that's from the original Blu-ray, that original DVD that 100 Tears, that On Earth put out of 100 Tears. Then we have the original cut, which is a couple minutes shorter. This is the director's cut, and there's not that much difference. I don't know which one he actually prefers. Interview with director Marcus Koch. I actually enjoyed that one because that's the new feature on there, and Marcus talks a lot about the distro and stuff, and companies getting picked up, and this getting NC-17. That's interesting stuff. That kind of I enjoyed that special feature. Blood, Guts, and Grease Paint. Making of 100 Tears. Original behind the scenes. Additional behind the scenes. Deleted scenes. Outtakes. Marcus Koch's childhood shorts. Is that like lunch meat and white something? I can't remember on there. And trailers. So if you guys have never had a chance to check out 100 Tears, here's your chance now on Blu-ray. Looking as good as it's gonna look in nasty goriness, but check it out. Sounds like it's up your alley. Marcus, good dude, and On Earth puts out some crazy movies, and this is one that I think a lot of people really do enjoy. So it's kind of a cult item, so check it out. Okay, next up is another kind of independent movie, and this is released by Troma Films, Refuse Films, if you will, and this is Eating Miss Campbell. Nostalgia is Cancer. Liam Regan, I think, is the director on this one. He did another movie called My Bloody Banjo, which came out a few years before this, maybe 2014. Never did get a chance to see that. Always wanted to. I'll probably have to track it down after this one. But Eating Miss Campbell, boy, this is fucking weird. This is a crazy, weird, bizarre movie. And I'm like, Dave, you see so many weird movies, but no, it's just a bizarre tone. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. It's definitely got this weird, kind of manic, crazy, self-aware energy, which I kind of dig. There's not that many British horror films that get made, especially with this kind of look. It definitely feels at times like Heathers. It feels very much like a trauma movie. It feels very, edgy and crazy and weird and goofy all at the same time. It's like disturbing, goofy, silly humor. I don't know how to explain that, but what we have here is Beth Connor. Is it Beth Connor is the main character? In the very beginning, she kind of talks to the screen. I know that there's some direct shout-outs and connections to My Bloody Banjo, so I'm probably missing a little bit of that while I talk about this movie, so... But she kind of talks about hating being trapped in a horror film, and she can't wait to kill herself to be put into something else, maybe a romantic comedy, whatever. But she obviously is breaking the fourth wall, talking directly to the audience. So she's trapped in a horror film. She doesn't want to fucking be here. And she's in this hellscape of a school, led by Vito Trigo, who's a very intense actor. He pops up in the Return to Nukem High 1 and 2. Very dedicated, very good performance usually in everything I've ever... I don't think he's ever done a bad job, but he's always intense, and I enjoy his performance. Just a crazy guy. Madman. A madman, if you will. And he's a madman in this as well. But you also notice Lawrence Harvey from Human Centipede Part 2 and 3 is also in this film. So this is a crazy, weird, bizarre film. Like I said a million times, I can't overstate that. So essentially what happens is there's a bunch of crooked school staff, and they want to cause a school shooting so they can get some weird funding or like sympathy so they get more money. It's all about greedy, weird capitalist stuff, but also at the same time they're just letting the school shootings happen and everything in that kind of vein. But our lead character Beth feels out of place. She's picked on by like these kind of three Heather kind of girls who are ridiculous as well, and she falls in love with this teacher, Miss Campbell, who is kind of a cannibal. She can't help but kill people. She has to kill people, and Beth Connor becomes kind of a crazy cannibal. So they fall in love, she starts killing, she starts eating, a bunch of other people are killed, and then we learn that there's a couple little bit more kind of behind the scenes kind of things happening, but the school's going to put on kind of like a weird thing where you have to have an eating contest, and if you win, you basically get a gun, and it's your choice to commit suicide or carry out a school shooting. Yes, this is the kind of movie we're in, and it's all played like goofy, and there's a lot of characters smiling and laughing, and they squeeze in nudity, and they make a comment that says, hey, every horror movie has to have nudity, and I think that they even make a joke later, I don't know if it's special features or not, but that Lloyd requires at least 2 scenes with nudity in here, so there's like 2 scenes with women with giant breasts, but it all out is a completely chaotic, weird moment. There's a kind of a weird character that everybody seems to love, even though he's a date rapist, and he constantly talks about molesting and raping people, and there's a funny joke about Scream 3 in here that I thought was pretty funny. Overall, Eating Miss Campbell is a bizarre, zany, I guess you say zany, edgy, weird, but edgy in a good way, edgy in a funny way, if that makes sense. If you're going to be like this, it's a trauma movie. If Heathers was a trauma movie, if that makes any sense, on a low budget. That's how I'd kind of explain Eating Miss Campbell. It's enjoyable. I liked it. It does seem to suffer a little bit from budget constraints, and it's not in the filmmaking. It seems like kind of the story plot lines, and it seems like this was filmed around the time of COVID at one point, so they had to stop in filmmaking, and it kind of fucked everything up. And I did notice the story seemed a little clunky at times with people disappearing, and it just seemed a little less... It didn't flow as well as it should have, but overall, I enjoy Eating Miss Campbell, and I think for a low-budget movie, I think it's... And I don't want to say that like with like faint praise, like, oh, for a low-budget movie, but it's solid. And I used to watch tons and tons and tons of low-budget movies, and I got burnt out on them. A lot of them are just unbearably bad now, and this is not that. Eating Miss Campbell is a fun movie, entertaining, weird, kind of bonkers-ass movie with some pretty good performances in it, and really gross. There's a lot of gross shit going on. Fits well with trauma. As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary, 7 Days of Hell, making of documentary, deleted scenes, outtakes, gore reel, raw B-roll, cast interviews, Fright Fest premiere, 1 hour of raw behind-the-scenes footage, VFX reel, introduction from Lloyd Kaufman, which is funny. Alec Baldwin, it's fucking ridiculous. Trauma trailers, Radiation March, and more. So yeah, this is a crazy movie. They even dedicated it to a passed away friend in the making of and stuff. But check this out. Weird ass movie. Eating Miss Campbell. Recommended. Okay, the next one here from the set of Super Spies and Secret Lies is Angel with the Iron Fist, also directed by Lo Wei, as the first film Golden Buddha was, and this one is even more crazy, even longer, and even weirder. Of course, it's in the same vein as those crazy James Bond kind of spy ripoffs. This time we have this woman who infiltrates this kind of crazy, almost all-girl gang to figure out where this, she has like this treasure, and she's trying to figure out these bad guys are after the treasure, and they're hiring all these people to kill people and everything like that. So she infiltrates here, and she kind of like almost like sweet talks this one guy to help her out and stuff. But it's really weird. And it takes a long time before she gets there, but at the very end, she becomes kind of trapped. Like, not trapped, but in this gang. And it takes a long time to figure out who everybody is. If they're bad, if they're good, what their motives are. There's also other agents. There's also people being picked off. And it reminds me a lot of, like, kind of like, it's very Bond-like, where like villains will punish other characters and say, you failed me, and then some like mechanism will come out and rip off their head. I was kind of shocked in 1967 that it had that kind of gore, not like I'm like, oh my dear, but it was bloodier and gorier than expected in that kind of aspect. Everybody's got these weird silly gadgets like Bond would as well. It's like, oh, this is the double bomb watch, all that kind of shit like that, but it's in the kind of Shaw Brothers-esque kind of vein. But our lead character, of course, infiltrates the gang, and she starts to kind of win over this one guy, but his girl doesn't really like it, and she starts to kind of butt heads with her and everything like that. There's all these other characters that are kind of hidden, and they're all after, like I said, this treasure. That she kind of has. I don't have all that much to say about this movie, except that I think I enjoyed this one just as much as Golden Buddha, maybe a little less. I think that it's a little long, and I think like the first couple acts are a little weird in the aspect. Not like the first act. I think it's just kind of like leaves you to too many characters to not knowing what's going on. There's like a murder, and we don't really know who that character is, and then we kind of like learn everything later on. And it asks, I guess like I sound like an idiot here, but it asks a lot of you in the very beginning, but by the time you're into like the secret base and everything like that, I think it's kind of worth your time. As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary by Mike Leader and Arnie Venema. And then we have International Supersize, new interview with James Bond expert Lueda Chapman on Global Blonde Mania in the 1960s. And it's very much that, right? Like, the end fight scene stuff is great, like I said at the very end, but I'm not the biggest Bond fan. And like when I'm watching a lot of these kind of like Bond kind of style ripoffs and spy films from like even Italy or this, I just don't connect with them. I thought Angel with the Iron Fist was kind of cool, was kind of fun, but overall it's just not something I would revisit very much. It runs almost 2 hours, which is really long for this kind of movie. I think people, if you want to recommend me, I need to watch the Mario Bava one, of course, Danger Diabolique. Recommend me some the classic Bond movies. I've seen a couple here and there, but what are the best spy films? What are the best classic spy films in this vein? Because I don't love these, but Gold Buddha worked for me. Angel with the Iron Fist kind of worked for me. So yeah, check this one out if it sounds like it's up your alley. All right, let's get to those 1982 movies. All right, first up is Nurse Diary, Beast Afternoon. Of course, this is a Nakatsu erotic films from the Impulse line from Synapse. And this one, it started off great. We have this idea of like, the whole plot is basically if we could watch people's dreams and study them, kind of like in kind of a psychic aspect. I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And in the Nakatsu world, this is going to be real weird. Opens up with a couple actually like committing suicide or being murdered, and one person kind of like drops, like it doesn't hold them in this dark and stormy night. And what we learn is there's this kind of weird device that you insert in a girl's vagina, a woman's vagina, if you will, and it will record their dreams. But these two kind of evil doctor and nurse have somehow set up this stimulation where they can ring a bell and it'll basically control her. So she starts to have these weird fantasies, sexual fantasies with the doctor. She's like a young girl. Her boyfriend constantly comes in. She has this fear of sex, so she doesn't want to have sex with him, is what they say on the back. I didn't know that because the movie's kind of sloppy. But she keeps having these fascinations about this doctor in a dream. She's like, why? But he's forcing her. And then we learn that these two are actually not the inventors of this device. There's a doctor who was trying to be killed in there, and he's like in a jail, but he's lost his mind because of all this shit. So they're trying to sexually stimulate him so he gets his mind back, so he can like just kind of like tell them how to use this device. There's also somebody in the background that is trying to like figure this shit out, and like, and it seems mysterious. The whole movie, the idea is great. The crazy thing that you could infiltrate somebody's dreams and change what they dream about and study their dreams and all this kind of shit like that with this device, inserted in someone's private areas. But then it just goes completely sloppy. It's like, oh, we have 5 or 6 fucking people coming in here and doing this, and a lot of people said it sounds like a really good story. If you lit on Letterboxd, if they did get taken back or taken, just get out of there and start talking about doing a bunch of sex scenes all the time, which, I love the Nakatsu erotic films. A lot of them I do. And I really like Hisayasu Sato's films because the story's great. Sometimes the sex goes a little too long in his movies, but not usually. This time, it just gets lost. The story gets lost when you're focusing on all these characters and all this kind of like weird drama and stuff like that. It just doesn't come together like it should. It comes together really sloppy. Otherwise, people called it like super dirt cheap, and I don't think the budget's really that bad. I mean, it's cheap, but they have decent sets, they have decent atmosphere, and they have a decent story. It's just that the storytelling is not necessarily great. It causes for a confusing, kind of sloppy, kind of film. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. All right, continuing the 1982 run here, we're going to do Swamp Thing, legendary movie here from director Wes Craven. This is from the MVD kind of rewind collection. I think this is their first 4K that they put out. I've covered Swamp Thing a couple times on my show, and infamously, I was never like the biggest fan of Swamp Thing. When I initially saw it, I used to watch it as a kid, I think, and the sequel and the TV show, and I liked Swamp Thing. I thought he was awesome, had a bunch of toys and things like that, a couple comics. But as I got older, in my like mid-teens, I just thought the Swamp Thing film was kind of dull. I didn't think it was really, kind of just boring and sloppy and low budget. I didn't really understand the behind the scenes, and I didn't really grow to appreciate it until much later. When that Blu-ray came out, I started having some fondness for it. When I watched the 4K, I actually became a fan of it. And this time around, I have some love for Swamp Thing. It, of course, stars, Adrienne Barbeau, Ray Wise, Nicholas Worth, David Hess, Louis Jourdain. So, a fucking amazing cast. It has music by Harry Manfredini, who did the Friday the 13th movies, and you could tell, but it's a good, solid score. And it's just got a decent storyline. It's based off the DC comic books of the same name, of course. Does it follow the comics really well? I don't think so. Wes Craven was never a big comic book guy. He didn't really know that much about Swamp Thing, but some of the storylines and stuff did come a little bit from it, according to him. He tried to be true to the story and everything like that, if you listen to the commentary, which I did enjoy and I did listen to. But this was filmed in kind of like a swamp, mostly filmed in kind of like, I guess a reserve, park reserve, but a little bit off the beaten path, they said. So it did get a little kind of hairy out there with the environments and things like that. So it's kind of a weird mixture here. We have Adrienne Barbeau in 82. She had done a voice for The Thing, of course, in John Carpenter's Thing, but she also was in Creepshow. So she worked with Carpenter, Romero, and Craven all in the same year. I don't think anyone else could say that. Maybe somebody behind the scenes. But she's really good in this. And she's kind of like a government agent that comes to like fix these kind of machines in the swamp. They're doing these kind of things in the swamp. Ray Wise is there with his sister trying to figure out the special kind of herb or something that will help like cure like food and help plants grow wherever they can, right? To make them really strong. So what happens is Arcane is the evil guy in Louis Jourdain, and they think he's dead, long gone, but he's still living in the swamp, and he sends his henchmen and Nicholas Worth, David Hess, and a slew of other guys here. Great group of henchmen. Nicholas Worth, of course, was a Vietnam Green Beret, but he was also a power lifter. He'll pop up in things like Don't Answer the Phone from 1980, Hell Comes to Frogtown. He's Paulie in Darkman. He's in Best of the Best 2. Just a really iconic, memorable goon. Always enjoyed him. He's Bruno, the henchman in this. He's really good. Also has a couple moments of like heart-touching moments here. He also worked with Wes Craven in Invitation to Hell, and he was the voice in The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 as Ripper. David Hess, the other goon here, what was his name? Ferret. Now, David Hess is infamous goon, of course, and he got his big start in terms of acting from Last House on the Left as Krug. And it's one of the best scenes ever. He kind of played a similar character in Hitchhike and House on the Edge of the Park for Ruggero Deodato, where he does a great job as well. But David Hess, also infamous baddie. So these two together, I was like, that's very cool. I mentioned every time I talk about the movie in 1980. And both years in 1980, don't answer the phone. Nicholas Worth got shot in the back and fell out a window and ended up in a pool. And David Hess got shot in the groin, fell backwards out of a window and ended up in a pool. And that's where they both die in both of the movies. I don't know. And they're both evil rapists in it. So that's very funny. Those the cast here. Ray Wise also really good as the doctor before he's turned into Swamp Thing. But it's your Darkman story, right? The Arcane comes in. They have discovered a new formula that plants can grow on anything. It gets destroyed, and Ray Wise gets burst into flames. He runs into the swamp and whatnot, and he becomes Swamp Thing. And they kidnap Adrian Barbeau and try to get this special, serum. How it was made, they're missing books, and they kill everybody. So it has the weird comic book panels from here and there that switch through, but it never really quite feels exactly like comic book. It was way before the formula was heavily established in terms of film. Like, there would be some other comic book style films, but never really. I mean, like, they had the Doctor Strange movie was 78, and they had some crummy cartoon stuff out there, and then later the 90s we'd have the Fantastic Four and Captain America. But the superhero genre really wasn't as established as it was in terms of film. There were some early ones and similarities, but it wasn't quite there. And Wes Craven was one of the first to do it, so that's interesting in that aspect. I do like Dick Durock, who plays Swamp Thing in the suit. I think he's good. I think he's got a good look. The suit doesn't always look great, especially in 4K. It looks kind of hammy. It looks kind of you can see seams bursting and stuff like that. And a lot of the movie does get repetitive because we have these goons chasing Adrian Barbeau in the swamp. Swamp Thing pops out, tips over their boat. You see Nicholas Worth get thrown in the water 4 to 5 fucking times. And it's poor Nicholas Worth falling in the fucking nasty swamp, which they said was filled with parasites, bacterial parasites. But overall, this movie's decent. It's fun. It has a kind of a violence in it that is weird. It's kind of aimed at kids at point. There's a PG version of it, and then they made a European version where Adrian Barbeau is nude, and this has both cuts on there. So they had an R-rated version. Also, that version has some strippers at the very end, stripping in front of the goons and everything like that. So it's just bizarre. And I feel like a lot of the footage is kind of missing from this. The goons have more names. Danny, where's Danny? Where's so and so? David S. is where's Danny doing? And you're well, who's Danny? They're giving these guys names, which is appreciative for the actor and probably for the audience, but at the same time, you're huh. That guy never had a name. But there's also a little kid character, of course. You got to add that element. It's a weird mixture of movies, right? It doesn't really know what it wants to be because that formula really hasn't been established. But Wes Craven's trying to get kind of an established formula. I mean, it's established in the comics and comic strips and stuff, but making it into a film is a little weird. I do like the score. I do like the location. I think it's shot fairly well. It's acted fairly well. Louis Jourdain is a good Arcane. I think he does a good job. He's evil. And Nicholas Worth, I love. I love Nicholas Worth. I love David Hess. I love Adrian Barbeau. I like Ray Wise. It's hard to pass up the cast. The score is really good by Manfredini for what it is. You know what I mean? It's not your typical Friday the 13th score, but his scores all sound similar. You could definitely tell it's his if his score pops up in the Children. I believe he did the Children score. Did he? Did he do the Children score? But all the scores sound very familiar to me. But I enjoy most of them. Wes Craven on the special features, the commentary, he talks about having a lot of trouble here. They're cutting the budget at the spot, all sorts of shit. Just making life a living hell for him. So here we go here. As far as more features, what we have here is PG and theatrical and unrated cut in 4K, Dolby Vision and everything like that. Audio commentary with Wes Craven, moderated by Sean Clark. That's the theatrical PG version. Wes Craven talks about just having a terrible time making this in terms of the studio making it not easy for him. Audio commentary with makeup effects artist William Munns, moderated by Michael Felsher. A theatrical PG version, mini poster, and then we have some interviews here. Artist William Munns moderated. Tales in the Swamp with actress Adrian Barbeau, 16 minutes. She said she was very disappointed with the outlook of the movie. She didn't get a chance to look her best on it. She saw the end product. She's man, I look like shit. My hair looks terrible. All sorts of things like that. But interesting. And Adrian Barbeau seems like a genuinely sweet, great person. Hey Jude, with actor Reggie Bates. That's the young kid in here. Didn't really act before this at all. And that Swamp Thing with Len Wei, creator of Swamp Thing, Swamp Screen, designing DC's main monster featurette. From Krug to Comics, How Mainstream Shaped a Radical Genre Voice, and Photo Gallery's theatrical trailer. I've covered this before, so if you want more information on the special features, go check it out. But revisiting Swamp Thing in terms of 1982 horror film, it's interesting to think, we had George Romero, Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, John Carpenter, all making horror films in 1982. Tobe Hooper, Wes Craven. So many people working in the genre. Larry Cohen. So it's a pretty strong year in terms of talent, in terms of top echelon horror directors that everybody loves, and there's probably dozens of others that I didn't mention just off the top of my head. But yeah, that's a lot of the big guys in there still making movies, and it's cool. And I think Swamp Thing's better than its reputation is concerned. You know, as I get older, I just have more love for it, and it's probably a lot of the cast and stuff like that. Yeah, Swamp Thing, an uneven movie, but one that I enjoyed nonetheless. Okay, the next one here is a co-production between Philippines and Hong Kong. Mostly a Hong Kong movie, I understand. Made in the Philippines as well, back and forth. This is Marianna, and I hadn't heard too much about this one, but I popped it in to watch it, and it's like a VCD, so the quality's not 100% great, but it's watchable. So yeah, this one follows the story of a guy he's a businessman, and he jumps back between Hong Kong, leaves his wife and kids there, and goes to the Philippines to make business deals, but he is promiscuous, right? He sleeps around a lot. They kind of hinted, they say this, talk about this. Reminds me a little bit of Bewitched from 81, right, where we have that guy who goes and has an affair and then leaves the girl, and he gets bewitched, he gets cursed, from Shaw Brothers. Also, so he meets this woman there, and he starts to kind of like, you see him in an affair and everything like that, but there's these kind of two tribes that hate each other, and they kind of work for this guy that the business guy's working for, and you kind of see their hate and everything like that. And one wants to marry this girl, Marianna, and the other doesn't want her to be married. The tribe she's from, they don't want anything to do with her, and she agrees. But she tries to escape this tribe, and she jumps in this guy's car, and he ends up taking her back, and they start some sort of strange relationship. She begs him, please take me with you when you go back to Hong Kong. He brings her back to his wife, and his wife's like, what the fuck is going on? He says, listen, she needs to stay here as a maid. She'll help. She won't cost any, yada, yada, yada. You know, that turns out she just doesn't want to go back to the tribe and everything like that. And he starts to have an affair with her. They start a relationship, of course. This kind of ends up being something like Woman on Fire from 82 as well, the South Korean movie, which is a remake of a 60s film, or something like Suddenly in the Dark, which is another South Korean movie where like the wife starts to think that the maid is, or Wolf Hour. It's such a common trope. He's like, hey, I brought this other woman into our house when we have a wife and kids. Trust me with her. And then the wife starts, anything, she catches the affair, and the wife says, fuck you, I'm going to the Philippines. After our maid or whatever is kicked out of the house, she goes back to where we think the Philippines, we don't really know. But there's also a lot of strange characters from the Philippines popping up in Hong Kong, attacking their children, trying to figure out where Marianna has gone. But they end up back, everybody ends up back in the Philippines. He's trying to rekindle his marriage, and they end up kind of running across Marianna and the tribes, and what we have is this giant, epic, crazy, violent showdown, and it's a really dark and bleak movie by the end of it. It literally like reminds me of Cannibal Holocaust style footage, like burning villages and shit. I was like, oh, it's going bigger, it's going crazier, it's going weirder than I expected. Overall, Marianna's a pretty solid movie, pretty good film. I enjoyed it. Check it out. Okay, the next one will be very brief with, because this is totally not up my alley. Like last week, I talked about, psychic transmission, first transmission psychic TV, which I was like, it's interesting in terms of 1982, and I want to talk about it. I don't want to ignore it, but it's something that I'm not really into, or don't have the, I'm not into a lot of the underground music. This is S.P.K. Despair. This is by an Australian kind of noise industrial band that started in the late 70s, S.P.K., and they made this in 1982. This is about 50 minutes. A lot of it is kind of concert footage and the kind of live performance art while they're on the stage. And it's kind of cut with a lot of weird edited, like degraded kind of video footage of, what you would say is like real death pictures or Mondo films or autopsy footage and stuff like that. Nasty stuff, weird stuff. And the very ending turns into like King Edgelord kind of shit where it's like, hey, there's this decapitated head and a severed, like a dick and an autopsy. It's like, it's like... I mean, that's got to be footage they made for it. I kind of doubt maybe somebody broke into the autopsy thing and was like, ooh, and it looks fake as well. But, after watching all the real stuff, you think, oh, is that real? So, here's where we get it. 1982, that's probably really rough for some people to watch. But for me, in general, for people nowadays, they've already had social media. They've already Rotten.com. They've already seen millions upon millions of atrocities on the internet. They've already had August Underground, Slaughter Vomit Dolls, millions upon millions of things. They've had fetish films made into like porn blood fetish movies and all sorts of things, the Japanese films. So there's been so much crazy shit. Not to mention at this time we had already seen the Mondo films. We had already seen a lot of a couple of the Faces of Death films, and then we've had after that Traces of Death, Faces of Gore. So these things have become almost so we've all become desensitized to this. Anybody, you know, now maybe somebody who pops in like this S.P.K. is like, I like the industrial music, which the music was pretty cool in the video and stuff. It's not really my style of music, but I don't hate industrial. So I listen to a little bit. I'm not an expert on music at all. Some would say I'm not an expert on movies, but so like I'm like I can understand to a certain extent 1982, like wow, because everybody's like, oh, not for the Queen music. I'm sure these are probably fans of the band that watch this, but somebody who's well versed into like Mondo films or crazy documentaries like Orozco the Embalmer, I've seen these autopsies done, and they have like Orozco is interesting for the fact that you're seeing this third world country's autopsy procedures and stuff like that. I'm like, this is crazy, this is different, this is unique. Although it's disgusting and hard to watch, I'm still getting some kind of intelligence out of it. But when I'm literally just watching footage of an autopsy, I'm like, okay, like I'm not even that bothered by it. I get what you're trying to set this thing, and a lot of their lyrics have stuff like, you know, like a lot about Marxism and stuff, and I just it's stuff that I don't like. It seems like edgelord childish bullshit to me at this point in my life, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this band is amazing, maybe they were really young at this time, but overall, just my takeaway from it is the stuff is not shocking. It seems very old hat to me, and even was old hat in 1982, and I'm talking, I did have some more, you know, appreciation for something like Psychic TV. You know, First Transmission, because that tells a weird story, and it seems a little bit more like discovered found footage stuff. This just having the video footage, like the band playing, and then cuts to weird things like, you know, old man's head sucking a fucking dick. I'm like, okay, this is just stupid. And like, it's just, it is what the fuck ever. Like, I'm not disturbed by it. I'm not bothered by it. It just seems like corny, childish edgelord shit. The music's not bad, and I think that's why probably most people watch this and enjoy this. I couldn't understand any of the fucking lyrics if there were any. You know, a lot of people are quoting lyrics in the reviews. I'm like, I couldn't hear shit. You know, I heard some like weird noise, like background stuff and repeated lines that are supposed to mean a lot of things. And this is supposed to be like a mood piece. You're supposed to put this on and be like, oh shit, this is crazy stuff, be high, be fucked up, you know, and whatnot. Probably in the same vein as the First Transmission, and I'm probably in the same like boat here talking about this. Everybody's like, you don't really know what you're talking about. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at this as just a piece of kind of horror music from 1982, I already think that it's old hat and dated. I think that people that do watch this and are like, oh wow, that's crazy, are more familiar with the music than any kind of extreme horror films or anything like that. I don't know if this has a reason to exist anymore. I mean, yeah, if you like the music, cool. But S.P.K. Despair, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend it for fans of the band. Or maybe a mixture of musical videos and Mondo films, which is a weird combo to say. And I'm not a big fan of all the Mondo films, you know, like Mondo Connie is special. It's a unique film. Or Goodbye Uncle Tom is such a crazy ass movie, and the way they do it, retelling history with a camera, is fucking nuts. Faces of Death has its place in history. It has some interesting things. But like when you get to like Traces of Death and even Faces of Death too, I'm like, no, I'm good on that. I don't even like the Jane Mansfield Mondo movies, you know? So, like, they get really boring to me in a lot of ways. And this one, again, got to that point where I wanted to roll my eyes by the end of it. So I would not recommend this. Probably should have skipped it. Not because it's so disturbing, just because maybe it's just something that I'm a little bit more harsh on than I should. But it's up to you guys. You guys know what it is now. Okay, so it's a Patreon pick. What can I do? What can I do? I'll watch almost anything that a Patreon picks for me to watch. And Dan, the cameraman, that son of a bitch, he picked Air Bud. Now, sometimes I throw him in a bag. I'm like, yeah, odds of picking that out. I'll deal with it when it happens. So now here I'm dealing with it. And I got to watch Air Bud, which is a 1997, I think, Disney movie. Spawned a franchise, a huge fucking franchise. How many movies? 10, 15 fucking Air Bud movies? Space Buddies? I don't know what's going on. So 97, I was 11 years old. Now, even at 11, I was like, Air Bud, I watched it, I saw it, didn't like it, make jokes about it. But this is the time when there's like a million of these movies where it's like, we got Joey. Is that the one where like the fucking orangutan was playing hockey? Or that's the one with, there's one MVP where the orangutan or a chimpanzee's playing hockey or some shit. So like it was a common thing, right? Or Monkey Trouble, where it's like, yeah, which is really weird that Luciano Tovoli did the DP work for fucking Monkey Trouble. Saw that when I was talking about Tenebrae. But you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, we have these animal sidekick things. Everybody loves animals, Disney, so it's live action. We have Kevin Zegers, who's in the Dawn of the Dead remake and child actor, ended up being in a bunch of movies. And he ends up, you know, kind of having to move. I think they're moving somewhere. He's not happy about it, you know, with his mother. And he has no friends. And his dad had just died. And they used to play basketball together. And at the same time, this dog, who's being forced to work for this evil clown and Michael Jeter, classic character actor, and stuff like Out of Sight. And, he's He's in Thursday. I just talked about that, and he's also in Jurassic Park 3. But Michael Jeter, pretty good actor. He's his clown, and he sucks at his job, and his golden retriever, Bud, is always fucking him over and getting him in trouble. So this dog basically gets kicked out, and of course these two are going to cross paths. The mom doesn't want the dog, but the kid wants the dog, and the dog starts to teach him how to play basketball, right? The kid sucks at basketball, has no one to play with. The dog starts teaching him, but the kid at the same time wants to join the basketball team at school, and since he's an outsider, maybe he's a dorky, they're like, you can get the water, you'll get the water. And I can't think of the character actor bully on the basketball team. Brent Fletcher, he's in The Revenant, he's in Rampage, the Ulai Bull movie. He plays the lead character in Rampage. Pretty good performance, pretty good character actor, but he plays the lead bully on the basketball team. So that's pretty much what's going on in Air Bud. The dog teaches him how to play basketball. Eventually the mother falls in love with the dog. Everybody loves the dog starts helping him win. The kid becomes better enough at basketball he can actually play. Bill Cobbs is the janitor who secretly plays basketball, but guys, guess what? We know he's an ex-pro. And the kid finds out, and some circumstance happened, and Bill Cobbs ends up coaching the team, and the dog's going to help, but Michael Jeter's going to come back, and he wants his fucking dog back. Classic Disney bullshit. Not all Disney movies are bad. I'm not saying there's a lot of great fucking Disney movies. Mostly they're animated movies, let's be honest. But there's some classic old ones that are live action, like Something Wicked This Way Comes, or even Black Hole's weird enough to like. But you know what I'm saying? Like this one here, it was worse than I remember. Charles Martin Smith directed it, which is crazy to me. Charles Martin Smith would direct Trick or Treat, 1986, a great horror film that I love. He's also an actor. He is in Untouchables. He's in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. So, this is a job for him. And it's not poorly directed. The writing is bad. It's cheesy as hell. It's corny as hell. I get bored very quick with it. I would never watch Air Bud, so it's not really fair for me to be talking about Air Bud, but somebody picked it for Patreon pick, so I did my damn best, all right? Air Bud is okay. The dog died a year later of cancer. That's very sad. It's very kind of just like, it's one of those things that somebody tells you, you're like, huh, that's just fucked up, right? Like, hey, that dog from Air Bud died like a year later, and it was like, that's sad, because it's not good. But there's a bunch of them. I think Air Bud plays football. Even as a kid, I was like, playing football now? This is even stupider than before. And I'm like 12. I was a fucking little jaded prick at 12 years old. I wanted to watch fucking Ghoulies 2 and Dawn of the Dead. I didn't want to watch Air Bud, alright? I didn't like Air Bud. I liked fucking zombies. But overall, Air Bud, it's okay. It's not the worst movie ever. People are giving it like half a star and shit. It's not that fucking bad. It's a kid's movie with a dog that plays basketball. It's fucking stupid. It's fine though. It's directed like a feature film. The story's boring. It's corny. It's cheesy. There's some, I guess, the judge at the end who's like, we'll just have the dog determine, which is the same ending to Monkey Trouble, which I don't know why I remember that movie. I shouldn't. I wish that movie was not in my brain. I still remember Monkey Trouble. But overall, Air Bud is mediocre as hell. Not as bad as, it's as bad as you think it is. It's exactly as bad as you think it is. I thought maybe I'd get a 3, because like when somebody picked Real Steel as a Patreon pick, I was like, Real Steel? Like the fighting robots movie, whatever. I watched that and I was just like sitting there like, watching it invested. So like, it's not like I'm so jaded. Like there's kids movies that can get to me. There's family movies that can get to me. There's a lot of classic kids movies that I would love. But Air Bud's not one of them. It's mediocre at best. I love Bill Cobbs. Bill Cobb's a classic actor in like New Jack City and People Under the Stairs. And he does a pretty good job. Died a couple years ago, unfortunately. He's fine in this. He's good in this, I guess. Overall, I think the actual ref here is the owner of the dog, Air Bud. Air Bud was a famous dog besides, I don't know his real name, if it's Air Bud or not. I think the dog actually did play basketball, so that's why he's in this movie, and it's whatever. But, the one of the refs is the guy who owned Air Bud, probably taught him how to play basketball. Overall, Air Bud. It is what the fuck it is, man. But, that's the Patreon pick. Thanks a lot, Dan, the cameraman. You're a piece of shit. But whatever it is, I'm just kidding. I had fun. I hope you guys had fun watching it, too, or listening to me talk about it. But, yeah. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and concerns. Bad Brains Horror saw Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 in theaters. Really enjoyed it. Laughed out loud a couple times. I'll have to check that out. Forgot who the director was. It's still in theaters, hopefully. Ed Rudy, 1967. Love your work. Really enjoy every new show each week. Thank you. Some thoughts on Scary Movie and other non-PC movies by today's standards. You're absolutely right. Movies like books, comics, and every other cultural product are a reflection of their time, and I expect any thinking person to recognize and accept that fact. In my opinion, disclaimers or warnings about potential sensitivities based on today's perspective are not just unnecessary, they're manipulative in their own way. I actually look forward to the day, hopefully not too far in the future, when we'll see warnings about the ideological leanings or outright propaganda permitting in modern films, especially streaming content. That said, I'm open to accept exceptions. Movies like Cannibal Holocaust, some of Fulci's more extreme works, or the Terrifier franchise could come with a note about their graphic violence. But humor? There should never be a warning for that. Certainly not multiple ones in a row. In today's climate, Monty Python would not be possible, and that would be crying shame. Just my 2 cents. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain extent. Like, I feel like people that are into old cinema should have learned that by now. You know what I mean? And I do see what you mean, though. If you give a meeting like, well, this comedy here was outdated in today's standards, people are going to be like, a lot of people might be ready to be mad about something. But there's a lot of people out there, I think, as you get older, you just don't get that mad about things. Some people go the opposite way. But when it comes to cinema, I also have a weird cutoff line. I'm a weird guy. Like Cannibal Holocaust, I'll watch that. I'm like, okay, you know, I love this movie. I hate the animal violence, but it is what it is. At the time, a product of its time, it probably shouldn't have been done then. It definitely shouldn't have been done then. And it most certainly should not be done fucking now. But if I hear about a new extreme movie like Marianna and they're like, hey, he killed a cat last year, I'm like, fuck that movie. Fuck that dude. Fuck that. I'm not watching that. We're way fucking past that. We don't need some fucking psychopath bringing it back. All right? It took long enough to get over it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I completely... But it's a fucking movie. We got so many more problems in everyday life and everything like that you know, people always die on the smallest hills, right? They die on the smallest hills and ignore the giant ones that are all behind them. And I always made a joke that people are just basically, in today's, you know, world, are going to be dying on all these small little hills. And in the back, all the big things that actually fucking matter won't have any bodies on it. Because we all died on the small hills arguing about petty bullshit. Like, this movie's offensive because, you know, it had some horrible stereotype that everybody knows is already dated and we shouldn't even be paying it really any attention in the first fucking place. And I'm sorry that we are all punished as a culture by stupid people that adapt their personalities after, you know, movies that they shouldn't be. It is what it is. It's just a crazy world, and it's so complicated and weird. But it's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie. Jesse Gallagher's F for your information. Cinematograph. 8 years of French is pronounced that way, so it's cinematograph. Cinema. I have to hear you say it out loud a couple times really fast. But that's the sub-label by Vinegar Syndrome everybody always stumbles over, including myself. Martin VP, thumbs up. Thank you. Jack London, kudos to you. Your shows are great and so in-depth. Your formula is spot on. Thank you. Gary Nunez, that gives me a little smile. Thank you. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up and stuff. Alexander Rodell, 7893. Psychic, here's some information about Psychic TV from last week. Psychic TV were a super group band art collective. They produced music under the name Psychic TV, and their visual media was produced under the name the Temple of Psychic Youth. They were formed by Genesis Porridge after their previous group disbanded. The foundational industrial band Throbbing Grizzle, Psychic TV had collaborators along the likes of William S. Burroughs, Coyle, and Soft Cell. They were always in esoteric occultism and destruction of mainstream media and culture. Definitely can kind of gather some of that information. You know, I read a little bit about them, but it was a lot of information, and instead of like saying a bunch of bullshit facts that I got wrong, you know, I just kind of was like brief information. I appreciate you doing that. Ken Coakley, I watched The Possession of Joel Delaney for the first time in years the other night. I had watched it again through the years. I thought, Jesus, kid, you're grossing me out. Other than that, it was a good movie. Shirley MacLaine was barely recognizable. In real life, her brothers weren't Betty. So I thought Betty would have been an interesting choice as the title character. But this movie was another good movie that Perry King made through the 70s. He starred in Mandingo as James Mason's character. I'm not sure. I know James Mason's in that. The film also starred heavyweight boxer Ken Norton, who's offered the role of Apollo Creed in Rocky. Speaking of Stallone, Perry King, he starred with Sylvester Stallone in Lords of Flatbush, which is one of my favorite Perry King movies. King replaced Richard Gere in the movie because Gere was being too disruptive. I'm not sure if you ever saw that movie, but it's a great film and artistic achievement. I have not. I'll look into it. Another Perry King movie I like was The Choir Boys. The movie was a comedy based on the book by Joseph Wambaugh, who usually wrote serious police novels, but the book The Choir Boys was hilarious. I have the film, and I know it's got a great cast. The film had a star-studded cast including Perry King, Charles During, Lou Gossett Jr., Randy Quaid, James Wish, Don Strode, Stephen Mott, Burt Young. King, also, as you know, starred in Class of '84 as well. He also auditioned for Han Solo Star Wars. He did a TV show called Riptide with Tom Bray, who was in Prince of Darkness as the guy that Alice Cooper kills with a bicycle. There we go. As I look at young Perry King, I think he would have been a great Superman if Christopher Reeve had been found. I think you're 100% right. Back to Possession of Joel Delaney. The relationship between King and McClane reminded me of my relationship with my sister. Like Joel, I am very laid back, and while I love horror movies, I hate violence. When he was accused of attacking his landlord, his sister said he was incapable of violence, and that is me. 2 weeks ago, I put up a post about it wasn't on the show, so I assume that it's sent late. No, I never got it. I never seen it. I don't think I did. If I did, sometimes the YouTube fucking deletes them. Like, I kid you not. Sometimes they just don't come, but I don't understand why. I watched Play It Cool on an Arrow Player app. The movie was beautifully shot, but the film was dark. The men were portrayed as being abusive. The main character's mother's boyfriend made my blood boil. Yeah, I wanted to kill him too. I was furious. I didn't notice that the Yakuza pretty much ran the prostitution racket, and the Johns were businessmen who want to be waited on hand and foot. I know that they are sex crazed like all men are. Even today, Japan had some really cool things, like a bunch of rooms or at airports and trade stations that are little cubicles that have a bed you can rest on if you're waiting for a long time. I heard that they have vending machines for everything. Disgustingly, they supposedly have vending machines that sell soiled panties. Yuck. A friend told me that. My point is that in the film, the men are very conservative back then and still are. All the technology today, but they won't allow mosques, churches, or synagogues. I also watched A Certain Killer. The main character seemed philosophical and laid back. The film was pretty good. Not as good as The Killer, but still pretty good. Of course, I have seen Don't Torture a Duckling. Talk about upsetting. Every time I think about the film, it makes me think about the time I worked at Suncoast. My then girlfriend, now best friend, worked there as well as our manager was a horror fan like me. One day, a guy came in and asked for "Don't Torture a Duckling," but didn't remember the title, but described the synopsis, and manager got it. I wasn't there because I had the day off. The customer started talking to my girlfriend, bragging about being from New York, and continued saying that you had to be from New York to understand Lucio Fulci because Fulci wasn't from New York. My girlfriend didn't correct him, but she called me afterwards. She isn't into Fulci, so she couldn't correct him, but she lived in Italy in the 80s and saw him on TV doing interviews. She went to Rock and Shock with me and spoke with Ottaviano Dell'Acqua, who plays the zombie in Zombie. The poster zombie, and Al Cliver in Italian. Our manager knew lots of horror and came from Pennsylvania. His assistants were best friends with Cameron Romero, George Romero's kid. He told me that Kira Shalong, who I think is it's actually Karen Cooper, if I'm not wrong. I probably mispronounced her name. John Apples and others were regular customers. The company wanted to transfer him to Suncoast Monroe Mill Mall. He turned it down because it's a rough area and that theft rate was very high. He only worked at the Monroeville Suncoast once because George Romero was signing autographs there. Back to the movie. The movie is very shocking because they show kids being killed and their bodies floating in the water. There was something wrong with the kid who didn't get it on with Florinda Balkan. I think you mean Barbara Boucher in that scene. That comes in the room and everything like that. Lastly, I just rediscovered one of my favorite John Woo movies, films 1990's Bolt in the Head, which appears to be a prequel to Better Tomorrow. 4 young men from Hong Kong who go into a life of crime by running guns to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Thank you for all the information, everybody. We're going to hop into this update. All right, let's get into this update. So Hamilton Books had these sale on these Dark Forest movies, these 4Ks and everything. Good price on all of them. So first up is Black Gestapo. I've never seen this one. I think I had a Blu-ray or DVD of it. But yeah, nice 4K on there. Looks cool. Check that out. Then we have Julie Darling, which I covered for 1982 already. Anthony Franciosa, Sybil Danning. So this movie's pretty wild, pretty crazy. 82, got some breast on there, which I should not have shown, but it is what it is. Maybe I'll blank out that half a second thing. But yeah, this is a pretty cool movie. Daughter of Death, Julie Darling. I prefer Julie Darling better as a title myself. Then we have Velvet Smooth here, another 4K here. Blaxploitation film. Never seen this one. Looks pretty cool. Next up, we have Fangs, aka Holy Wednesday. This is a Blu-ray here. They slither, they slide, they crawl, and they kill. Don't know this one. Do I prefer the title Fangs, or I think I like Holy Wednesday. That sounds like a cooler title, to be honest. I don't know. But as a kid, I'd rent Fangs. As a kid, I wouldn't rent Holy Wednesday, just because I wouldn't know what it is. Now, it's probably the opposite. Hundra. So this is another Dark Force here. She Will Not Be Tamed. Actually looks like, the kind of sword and sorcery movies of the 80s. Some of these are opened already. Not like open, but they have 2 seals. The slipcover sealed and the inside sealed. These ones are not, so I can't show you the case. And then next up we have Deadly Kung Fu Factor. I do not know this movie, but looks like some familiar faces on there that I would recognize. But yeah, I like my Kung Fu. And then we have The Golden Triangle, another Asian flick here. Don't know much about it. Good price. Decided to check it out. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Ride a Wild Stud, Adult Adventure, Violent Men Who Took What They Wanted, Your Money, Your Woman, Your Life. Looks like sleazy, do they call it a rape western on the back? Yeah. Yep, something like that. Looks trashy. I guess I got it, because I'm trashy. But, yeah, let's get back to the video. Alright, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.